So today we are going to finish up Ecclesiastes chapter 10 in our Ecclesiastes study. And if you haven't been here, don't know much about this study, Ecclesiastes is an Old Testament book of the Bible written by King Solomon. And King Solomon is that dude who could say, I've been there and I've done that. You think that you're doing it big in your life. You think that you're doing it well. You think that you've made a lot of money. You think that you're living in the nicest house. You think that you have it all. I am the guy who's had it all. I am the guy who has had everything that this world has to offer. And I'm here to tell you that it will not satisfy you. I don't know about you, but that calls me to want to listen to a guy like that. To listen to a guy who has been there, who has done that, who has experienced it all. So today as we read, what we're going to see is Solomon couldn't find happiness apart from God. He couldn't find happiness in pleasure. He couldn't find it in the most beautiful women. He couldn't find it in drinking the finest wine. He couldn't find it in owning the biggest home that your eyes would ever see. He didn't find it anywhere except in serving God. Today as we read, listen closely from Solomon's perspective from being away from God and thinking that the things of this world are what is going to make us happy. Starting with verse 16 in chapter 10, we are going to read 4 verses today and we'll finish up chapter 10 this morning. So Solomon says, what sorrow for the land ruled by a servant or a child, the land whose leaders feast in the morning. But happy is the land whose king is a noble leader, and whose leaders feast at the proper time, to gain strength for their work, not to get drunk. Laziness leads to a sagging roof. Idleness leads to a leaky house. A party gives laughter. Wine brings happiness. And money gives everything. We'll talk about that. Don't worry about it. Verse 20, never make light of the king, even in your thoughts. And don't make fun of the powerful, even in your own bedroom. For a little bird might deliver your message and tell them what you said. So try and preach through that this morning, right? Try and talk about that today and see how that applies to our lives. Well, that's what we're going to do, and I'm glad that you're here. I believe that what we're going to talk about today is going to give you some incredible truth and really shine some light into your life as how God has called you to live. The first thing that I want to do is I want to set the stage this morning to tell you, and I want to get you thinking about the people that you influence in your life. The truth is all of us in this room, we influence somebody. There are people that we influence every single day. And I want to say to you under this first point today, and looking at verses 16 through 18, that leadership matters. That how you are leading other people, it matters. In verse 16, Solomon talks about this immature leader. This leader who doesn't put other people first and the struggles that will come with that. He says, what sorrow, what hurt, what grief, what problems for the land ruled by a servant or a child whose leaders feast in the morning. What Solomon is describing here is an immature leader, and what sorrow and what problems will come when a leader is immature. Immature leaders never amount to anything. In fact, lots of sorrow will come to other people when leaders act immature and don't lead the way that they should, because their influence affects a lot of people. If leaders aren't leading wisely, then other people are going to suffer greatly. Now, when we say the word immature, I think our minds automatically think of age, of a person who is young. That if someone is young, then they won't be a good leader. Well, that's not necessarily true. I know young people who are great leaders. I know young people who are great godly leaders, and I know some older people who are lousy leaders, and vice versa. It doesn't always matter. A leader fails by turning to pleasure instead of ruling the people properly and being a blessing to others. Let me speak from the church's viewpoint for a moment. Leadership in the church, since the church was established in the New Testament church, leadership has been compromised many times by a pastor or a leader in the church seeking pleasure over what is right. For example, let's say a pastor has an affair, or a leader steals from the church or takes advantage of someone who comes to the church. The church will be hurt tremendously for these actions. The domino effect will be huge because of a lack of leadership. When the church fails morally, and a pastor or a leader seeks pleasure over leading the people the way that they should, do you know what that does to this world? Do Do you know what the world sees when that happens? Do you know what the world says when they see the church morally failing and pastors and leaders not leading the way that they should? They say things like, that's why I want nothing to do with the church. That's why I don't go on Sunday mornings, is because of that hypocritical behavior. Leadership matters in the church. Leadership matters in your job. If you own a business today, you know how important it is to be a good leader, to be open and to have good communication skills with your employees. You know that training is important and investing in your employees. You want your employees, you want your business to run as good and as possible. But remember this, good leaders are always producing more leaders. Bad leaders try and do it all themselves. They think that, hey, nobody can do it better than I can, so I'm just going to do anything and everything that I can to make sure that everything's done by me. A good leader will not necessarily have to work harder. They may just work smarter. Compromising our position of leadership by seeking instant pleasure has been the fall of many great leaders throughout the years. Many kingdoms have fallen because of lousy kings. Many communities have caved in because of bad leadership. Many businesses have shut their doors because of lack of good management. Families are affected for generations to come because of bad leadership within the family. And churches are devastated because of bad leadership. See, you can be a great leader. You can be a good, godly leader. You can be a great, mentor in this community. You can be doing some great things and being a great leader, but one decision, one bad decision can change all of that. One slip up, one bad moment, one moment of weakness can change it all, and your leadership credibility can be gone. Many churches over the years have been left picking up the pieces of leaders who haven't led in a godly way, who have traded pleasure for doing what is right. And to this day, the struggle and the brokenness is still there. Businesses have failed because of poor leadership. Families have failed. Immaturity, selfish ambition are what you could describe a bad leader. The Israelites in the Old Testament had immature and very selfish and irresponsible leaders, and their nation fell. We have the book of 1st and 2nd Kings that tell us about the kingdoms based upon leaders weren't seeking the face of God and weren't leading the way that they were supposed to, and seeing these kingdoms crumble. Bad leaders are selfish. They're lazy. But listen to verses 17 and 18 again, as we kind of get the answer to what a good leader is, what it means to be a good leader. It says, happy is the land whose king is a noble leader, and whose leaders feast at the proper time to gain strength for their work, not to get drunk. Laziness leads to a sagging roof. Idleness leads to a leaky house. So what we can take from that this morning is that a good leader will keep their priorities straight. They will not fall victim to foolishness. They will be noble leaders. They will train themselves up in godliness. Laziness and selfishness are characteristics that we don't want to be known for as leaders in our lives. The refusal to work, this attitude of laziness, will not get us to where we want to be. Personally, I'm a very driven person. I grew up playing basketball and being very heavily involved in athletics. So for me, I equate a lot of my drivenness due to sports and teaching me discipline. And I consider that a quality of any good leader, a person who is willing to put in the work behind the scenes, a person who is willing to work hard. See, a good leader will lead by example while working hard in the process. They won't just bark orders and tell everybody else what to do. They will also get their hands dirty and do the work as well. It's sad to see people adopt a life of laziness. Laziness can affect us in many areas of our lives. Some of the obvious are our health. If we're not eating healthy, we're not working out, then our health is going to struggle. Laziness. In our marriages, if we're not working hard and loving and encouraging and forgiving, working hard and laziness creeps in, it's going to threaten our marriage. In our jobs. But the most tragic area where laziness happens is in our spiritual lives. There are a lot of people in this community that would consider City Soul Ministries their home church. If someone was to ask them, what church do you go to? They would mention this church. Well, the reality is that many people in our culture today have become lazy in their faith. Once excited about serving the Lord, once excited about being a part of the local church and giving back, But as time moves on, life gets busy, laziness begins to take over. We dismiss our time together on the weekends as the church. While there may be people who identify this as their home church, they may not be committed every weekend like they should be, or living their lives for the Lord every day outside the walls of the church. I've heard this line before, and maybe you've heard it said a little bit differently, but the line of, there's usually 10% of the people who do 100% of the work. There's usually 10% of the people who do 100% of the work. Now, from your perspective today, would you agree with that statement? Let's think about your job for a minute. The people that you work with every day. Would you say that 10%, 20%, a very small percentage of people are actually working hard while everybody else is lazy and trying to cut corners? How about at your house? Now, I'm not trying to cause a fight between a husband and a wife or kids and your parents, but think about it. In your family, in your house, is it usually the same person doing all the work, working hard, and everybody else is lazy? How about this? How about at church? How about at church on Sunday mornings? Is it usually the same person that's doing the same thing over and over again, working hard, giving their time, their talent, and their treasure, giving back to the church? Is it usually the same few people? Well, typically, I'm not trying to be negative today, but typically the answer is yes to all of the above. Yes to our lives, yes to our jobs, and yes to the church. I don't want to be negative today, but I just want to encourage you and say, start today and work towards not being lazy in areas of your life. But most importantly, above all of these other areas, in your faith. Whatever you put in is what you're going to get back. If you're not in the Word of God, then you're not going to know what it says. And when you're out in this world and temptation comes your way, you're not going to have the sword to fight back with. You're not going to be equipped to be able to know how to fight back against temptation. I'm here to tell you that church is not a spectator sport. It's not to come in and to say, well, how good was it today? Or how bad was it today? Or, did Luke stutter today? Or was the music? That's not what it's about. Church is not a spectator sport. It is you understanding your role, that God has set you apart for a plan and a purpose, and being a part of that in this community. I'm here to tell you that your leadership matters, and how you carry yourself around other people, it matters. Moving on to the final two verses here in chapter 10. Let me read verse 19 to you, and then we'll talk about it. Solomon says, a party gives laughter, wine gives happiness, and money gives everything. Does that not sound like a rap song today? Does that not sound like the lifestyle of many people in our culture today? And doesn't that sound like the world? Well, it's the old line of the grass looks greener on the other side of the fence. Thinking that if I just had this, then I would be happy. Or if I just had that, then my life would be complete. This verse 19 is the exact opposite of how we should view our lives. But it's exactly what culture tells us will make us happy. Remember, Solomon's perspective is away from God. He's trying to find purpose away from God. And the reality is there's all of us in this room who have been at that place before in our lives. And maybe today you are experimenting with that and thinking that the world will make you happy, searching for happiness and pleasure and peace in the things of the world. The party scene may bring you some laughter for a while. It may bring you a sense of happiness for a season, but it's no way to live your life. Drunkenness and sleeping around and the pleasure lifestyle will not satisfy you. The thrill of alcohol will wear off, and it will have you coming back for more. And now you have this unquenchable thirst. I have good friends to this day who fell into the party scene thinking that they could handle it. Thinking that, this is what young people do, right? I'm young, I'm going to live it up. You only live once. This is how I'm supposed to live my life. What used to be a party in your teenage years has now turned into something every weekend in your 20s. And then in your 30s, now it's a full-blown addiction, and it's ruined so many people's lives. None of us today, none of us in this room are exempt from verse 19's philosophy. And I believe that we all struggle with this, and we've all struggled with it in our lives. We get conned in our society today into thinking that if we just had more money, that we would be set. We work 70-hour weeks, to drive the latest model SUV sitting out in the parking lot of where we work. We slave at our jobs to pay for things that we don't really need, thinking that the stuff is going to make us happy. And you know what suffers? Do you know what suffers? When our mindset is fixed upon a love for money, everything in your life will suffer. Everything will suffer when you love money. Dads working way too many hours throughout the week and have no relationship with their wife and their kids. Moms come dragging in, working way too many hours in the pursuit of, man, if I just had more money, if I just had more stuff. Don't misunderstand me. We just talked about working hard and not being lazy. What in the world? How do I do this? It's the word balance. It's being balanced in your life. And money has a way of blurring reality because we start to love that money more than we love God. We start to love that money more than we love our marriages. We love that money more than we love spending and investing quality time with our families. And we love money more than we love God. When we withhold from Him what is His, and that's His 10% back to His church. Money cannot solve your problems. Money cannot solve your problems. Only God can. Work hard this morning. Don't misunderstand. Enjoy your money. Enjoy stuff. Enjoy what you have, but don't be like verse 19. Don't love it more than God. Don't love it more than your family. In fact, don't love it at all. Instead, we see and look at what we have money-wise and be thankful for it. Look at what you have and say, Lord, thank you for what I have. Thank you for the ability to have a job. Enjoy it. Be wise with it, but never fall in love with it because it's a love story that doesn't have a happy ending. Let's take a look at verse 20. Solomon's talking about somebody behind their back and how the words that you say matter. And what he says in verse 20, he says, never make light of the king even in your thoughts, and don't make fun of the powerful even in your own bedroom, for a little bird might deliver your message and tell them what you said. So we've talked about leadership and how leadership matters, of how you need to be leading well and how important it is to lead in a godly way. We've talked about how loving money and pursuing pleasure and living it up and doing the party thing, how that won't satisfy you either, that's a lie. And now I want to tell you that number 2 is that your words matter. Your words matter. We are all aware of how mean people can be. And what I've seen today in our society is, man, we are mean to each other based upon our political views, right? I'm not here this morning to do any politics, but what I do want to say is what if we started praying for our leaders? What if we started praying for our president? What if we started praying for our mayors? What if we started praying for all of the leaders in our country today? Instead of spending so much time arguing, debating, saying hurtful things, what if we prayed as the body of Christ for our leaders in this country? The simple truth is that your words matter. Your thoughts matter. What you speak and how you talk to other people matters greatly. We live in a world today where words are there forever. With social media and direct messaging and text messaging, the things that you say are there forever. I don't have to tell you this. All somebody has to do is take a screenshot of what you said, and it's there forever. Your words matter. Now, in Solomon's day, they didn't have, iPhones and computers and the internet. They didn't have that. So for us in 2018, it's a little different for us. And looking and thinking about how much of our words carry weight in this world today. You can't even open social media without seeing something negative, without seeing someone say something hurtful about somebody or something. If it's not about politics, then it's something else. It's in your face. It's everywhere. And the words that we are speaking today are speaking volumes of who we truly are. In the book of James, we are commanded to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Quick to listen, quick to give our ear to somebody, and to be slow to speak. In our world today, we need a huge dose of that. We need a huge dose of listening more and talking less. Solomon says that our words matter because the truth is that somebody will always find out. The words that you say, the things that you type, the attitude that you have, it matters because it speaks volumes of who you are, of what is truly inside your heart. To the person who's always negative, always complaining, always nitpicking, this person always has all the answers. It's time to be quiet. It's time to listen. And it's time to weigh the power of your words before you speak them. I started thinking this week, and it made me really sad. to think about how many children today are being beat down by the words of their parents. Every single day, screaming and yelling and cursing at our kids today and putting them down. And our kids are scarred for life because of the words that we're speaking to them in our homes. How many marriages in this room, how many marriages in this community are struggling because communication is terrible, because we're not building one another up, because we're not forgiving, because we're not praying together, because we're not spending time together. Instead, we spend our time tearing each other down with our words. Your words matter. They matter to whoever you're speaking to. Your thoughts matter. What you say matters. And I want to propose this to you in closing today. Are your words pointing people to Jesus? Are your words pointing people to Jesus? Vulgar talk, cursing, gossip, slamming others, talking bad about other Christians, talking bad about other churches, talking bad is not the way to go. It's the opposite of speaking life and speaking love and speaking truth. Words are incredibly powerful. They have the power to encourage. They have the power to push someone in the direction of doing something great with their lives. But they also have the power to tear somebody down, to scar them for life and devastate them forever. I don't want to bring up any old bad memories in your life, but I guarantee you every single last one of us in this room is we can think of the time, the place when somebody said something incredibly hurtful to us. Maybe it was in the 8th grade and a kid called you a name or told you something. Maybe it was a friend of yours who turned their back on you and they said the most hurtful thing that they could ever say. But to this moment, we all have those experiences where people have said hurtful things to us. Whoever you speak to each and every single day of your life, please weigh your words before you speak them. Before you post, before you like, before you share, before you comment or whatever. Think about your words. Think about how they are going to affect other people. My prayer for us today is that we would see that God has called us to be great leaders, that He has called us to be great ambassadors for Him, to take His message, the gospel message, the good news of Jesus Christ into this world, and how we treat other people, the words that we speak, the way that we are leading them, it matters. Church, it's time to do something, as the title of the message says today, to do something by allowing God's Spirit living in you, to allow you to be a difference maker every day. Do something by being the leader that God has called you to do. Do something by speaking the truth in love to others. Do something by offering your life as a living sacrifice to the Lord this morning.